Well, good morning, everyone. Welcome. Welcome to the State Department. Bienvenido a todos y todas. Thank you so much for being here today. A year ago, we came together in Mexico City to launch the Bicentennial Framework for Security, Public Health, and Safe Communities. And we set three primary goals together: to protect our people, to prevent transborder crime, and to pursue criminal networks. And what's so critical is we define these goals together. They reflect a shared responsibility and a shared interest in working together to address challenges that neither one of our nations can adequately address alone. Today, we have an opportunity to assess the progress that we've made on these interconnected goals and to identify what more we can do to meet them. The high-level group represented here, including the Attorney General, including the Secretary of Homeland Security, including the Administrator of USAID, Ambassador Salazar, other leading U.S. government officials, focused on anti-corruption, on drug policy, on public health. All of us together reflect the comprehensive approach that the United States is bringing to bear on this set of issues, and we can visibly see a similar commitment on the part of our Mexican counterparts. That commitment is also evident in the unprecedented investments, the new legislation, the deepened coordination that we've demonstrated in our first year of implementation. Last November, President Biden signed the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law, which includes $1.9 billion for 6 new construction and modernization projects on the U.S. southern border that include enhanced security features. In June, the President signed the Bipartisan Safer Communities Act. This is the United States' first major gun safety legislation in nearly 30 years. And it makes straw purchases and the trafficking of firearms a federal crime, and that we've been using to hold traffickers accountable. We've made considerable new investments in substance use prevention, treatment, recovery, both to reduce the ravages wrought by illicit drugs and to reduce demand. This year, our Drug-Free Communities program has worked with 745 community coalitions in all 50 of our states to prevent youth substance use. Having said that, we still have a lot of work to do. We need to enhance our efforts to disrupt illicit fentanyl production and trafficking and synthetic opioids more broadly. Last year, approximately 108,000 people died in the United States of overdoses, most from synthetic opioids like fentanyl. Synthetic opioids are taking a rising toll in Mexico, too, something we've talked about in recent months. We need to enhance our efforts to disrupt illicit weapons trafficking. Last year, more than 33,000 people in Mexico were killed in intentional homicides. More than 2/3 of those came from firearms. So across these and so many security issues, the same truth holds. Our ability to protect our people depends on working effectively together. And that's what we're here to do today. From treating substance abuse use as a public health concern, to dismantling the financial networks of transnational criminal organizations, to addressing the root causes that drive people to organized crime, including a lack of economic opportunity. Marcelo, I just want to say to you and to all of our colleagues here, we are so grateful for the spirit of openness and cooperation that all of you continue to bring to this effort. In the days leading up to today, indeed every day. And that's happening not just among those at this table, but critically throughout the working levels of our governments. We deeply, deeply value it, we deeply appreciate it, and we look forward to a frank, open, productive discussion today as we've had in recent months. With that, let me turn it over to the Attorney General. Merrick.
Thank you, Secretary Blinken, Tony, Secretary Mayorkas, Ally, and to our esteemed friends. Great to see all of you again and to have this opportunity to reaffirm the central importance of the law enforcement partnership between our two countries. The first framework goal that we will address today, protecting our people, is a thread that runs through everything we do. It is why we do this work. On behalf of the Department of Justice, our prosecutors, and each of our law enforcement components, including the DEA, ATF, FBI, and the United States Marshal Service, I want to thank the government of Mexico for your continued partnership in our shared efforts to protect the people of both of our countries. I look forward to all of our discussions today and our continued work together.
Thank you.
Ally.
Ally?
Thank you very much, Secretary Blinken and Attorney General Garland, for your remarks. Secretary Ebrard, Secretary Rodriguez, Attorney General Gertz, and all colleagues. I am glad we're able to come together in this 200th year of our country's friendship to celebrate the successes in our implementation of the historic bicentennial framework that was adopted last year. We are, of course, regularly reminded of how intertwined our nations are. Not only do we have a network of communities across our shared border that demonstrates every day how much we have in common, how connected our peoples are, but we also share so much of our respective cultures. We have common democratic principles. We have interconnected economies, and of course, we face similar challenges. It is both a privilege and a pleasure to work together with all of you in strengthening our bonds, which have grown so remarkably over the past several years, to tackle the challenges that we both confront with really a united purpose and a shared foundational principle. I am very optimistic about the future because of all of you around this room and the teams whom you represent. I look forward to our dialogue today and to our continued work and friendship together in the days and years to come. Thank you.
Thank you, Anthony. Muy buen día. I'm going to turn to Spanish. Gracias,
thank you very much, Assistant Secretary. Thank you, Attorney General, Secretary Mayorkas, and the rest of the officials that are here. I just want to say that for Mexico, this bicentennial framework is a high priority to us. It's strategic, and today we're going to review the accomplishments of this year of joint efforts, and we're going to determine what we're going to do in 2023 to establish goals for that year. President López Obrador started a new security initiative. He launched it as he came in, and to get to the root causes of insecurity and deal with young people in the rural sector. We have more than 500,000 people. 2.2 youth are out of work, I'm saying. There's a high number of people out of work, so especially young people, and they're in a program that's created by we created a National Guard. For the first time, we're going to have dominion over the entire territory from the law enforcement point of view. Before, we had 400 police forces. And now a key point is this framework with the United States. That's why it's a framework, because we have common security issues. And so I can tell you, and I'd like to thank and underscore our gratitude to Secretary Blinken for his efforts, and Attorney General Garland, who we have met on many, many occasions, and Secretary Mayorkas, who we've spoken with a lot because they've become personally involved in all these efforts. What has been achieved over this year? Okay. There's 32,000 weapons have been seized. How do we view this in Mexico? For the first time, we have a reduction of the murder rate of 9.2%, approximately. Of these 32,000 weapons had been in Mexico, we hadn't worked together, we wouldn't have a 9.2% reduction of homicide rate. This means 17,000 cartridges. And each
matar a
cartridge
alguien.
can kill someone in
Entonces, es algo
Mexico. And so
sumamente
it's something
importante, no
that's
es
of the
solo
utmost
decir, son
important.
personas que
This is not
están
just
salvando vidas.
statistics. We're talking about saving
Y no podríamos
lives.
hacerlo
And we
si no
can't just
trabajamos
do
juntos.
it without
Entonces,
working together.
eso nos parece muy
And so
importante.
that's why we view it as very
Vamos a ver en un
important.
momento
We're
más
going to see
que
soon, we're going to
se
take a
han
look very soon
logrado
at that there's been an
detener
achievement of a
5
arrest
toneladas de
of
sustancias y
5,000
precursores químicos, incluyendo
chemical
fentanilo. Es un
precursors and
mundo.
fentanyl
Eso
as well.
puede envenenar a miles
It's
de
so much it
personas.
could poison
Si hubiesen llegado a
thousands
su
of people
destino.
if they had gotten to where they
154
were going.
toneladas de
150,000
metanfetaminas.
tons of
Es
methamphetamine.
Casi que le
It's
diéramos una
almost,
dosis de
it's if we get
metanfetaminas
a dose of
cada
methamphetamine, that would
persona
allow to give to
en
every
México
person in
de más
Mexico
de 50 años.
who's over 50 years of age. That would be enough.
94 toneladas de
Methamphetamine.
cocaína
94 tons of
con
cocaine
una
were seized
acción
as
muy
well,
destacada
with
de
a
intercepción en
special
el mar
interception
y
at
por aire
sea.
de cocaína.
Interdiction at
no voy a
sea has been.
extender,
I'm not
solamente
going to
decir que
get
con
more
estos
detail of these
resultados,
details. I just want to say with these
lo que debemos hacer
results,
es el
what we
año
should do
entrante
is
hacer todavía
next year
más
we should make it
para que
higher
se reduzca la
figures
violencia
to reduce violence
evitemos que
and
lleguen drogas
avoid
a
drugs
personas en
from
México
getting
o
to
en
people
Estados
in Mexico or in the
Dicho
United
esto,
States.
y
Now
con
that I've
nuestra
said this,
gratitud,
and with our
paso la
gratitude, I
palabra
give
a
the
la
floor right now to the
Rosa
Isela Rodriguez, the Secretary of Security and Citizen
Muy
Protection.
buenos días,
Good
tengan
morning
todas
to
y
everything.
todos
I'm
ustedes.
very happy to
Saludo
be
con
here with you
mucho
all.
gusto
Greetings.
y agradezco la cortesía de
And I
nuestros
thank our
anfitriones,
hosts for their
el secretario Blinken, el
hospitality,
secretario
Secretary Blinken,
Mayorkas y el
Secretary
fiscal Garland
Mayorkas,
y todos
and
los
Attorney General
presentes
Garland, and
y
everyone
el
present,
embajador Ken
and the
Salazar.
Ambassador Ken
Agradezco y saludo a los
Salazar.
compañeros del
Thank
gabinete del
and
gobierno de
hello to
México
the members of the
y
cabinet of the
pues
government
sí,
of Mexico, and yes,
subrayar
I
que la
want to
seguridad
underscore that
es un
security
tema
is a
prioritario para nuestros
priority, a
gobiernos
topic or issue
y
for
que
our
debe
governments,
permanecer
and
esta
must.
visión binacional
This binational
entre
vision
el
should
los
remain in
gobiernos
place,
Biden
government
López
to government,
Obrador
the
y que
government of López
prevalezca
Obrador
en
and
todo
the current government of the
momento
United States,
el
and at all
respeto a
time
la
there be
soberanía y el trato
prevail
igualitario.
sovereignty and
Es una
respect.
gran decisión
This is
por
a major
parte
decision
de este país.
by this
El
country.
entendimiento bicentenario nos ha permitido trabajar de
bicentennial
manera
framework has enabled us
coordinada
to work in
y
coordinated
acordar
fashion
esta
and agree
colaboración
upon this
sin
collaboration without
condicionamientos. Por
conditioning.
eso
With any
resaltamos
conditions.
que este
So we
instrumento
underscore
suma
that
a la
this
pacificación
instrument is
de
part of
nuestros
peace,
países o de nuestro país.
peacekeeping
Y ambas
or peace
naciones
efforts in
estamos
both of our countries,
obligadas al
and our
trabajo
nations are
conjunto
obligated to work
porque
together
tenemos
jointly
una
because we have
responsabilidad
a
compartida para
shared
combatir
responsibility to
el crimen
combat
organizado transnacional
transnational
que de
organized
este
crime,
lado de
which
en
on
Estados
this
Unidos
side
produce
in the United States
muertes por sobredosis de
leads
drogas y en
to
México
overdose
genera
deaths.
homicidios
And Mexico
violentos
has
ligados
violent
al trasiego
homicides
de
because of the
enervantes.
transfer
Sigamos
of
pues
these drugs.
trabajando
So
de manera
after
coordinada,
by
poniendo en
working together and
práctica
putting
como
into
hasta ahora hemos
practice
hecho
as we have done thus far
las capacidades de nuestros
the
estados
capacities
para
of our,
disminuir la incidencia de
states to,
delitos,
diminish
inhibir la
the
actuación de los grupos
crime
criminales
and to,
y abonar a la construcción de la paz
hamstring these
en
criminal
América.
groups and bring
Por
about peace
eso
in the Americas.
México
And
y
therefore,
Estados Unidos
Mexico and the United
estamos unidos
States,
por la
we
paz,
are
porque
united
tenemos
by
una
peace
relación
because we have
bilateral de hermandad muy
bilateral
fuerte, porque somos vecinos,
relationship of
somos
brotherhood
socios
because we're
y también en
neighbors,
muchas
partners,
regiones
and many
somos
regions,
familia.
we're family
sí.
members of each other. That's all. Thank you.
Gracias,
Thank
secretaria.
you very much, Secretary.
Antes de pasarle la
Before
palabra
I
al
give
doctor
the floor to
Alejandro
Dr. Alejandro
fiscal general de México,
Betz, the
quiero
Attorney
subrayar
General,
hoy la
our guest
presencia
of
que
Mexico, I
denota
want
la
to
importancia que tiene para
highlight the
México
presence, and it's
este
very
instrumento,
important in
el
this
secretario de la Defensa
framework of the
Nacional,
national
Crescencio
defense.
Sandoval,
Esencio Sandoval, the presence of our
almirante
defense minister and
Rafael
Admiral
Ojeda Durán, que es
Rafael
el
Ojeda,
secretario de la Marina.
who is the Secretary of the
secretario, por
Navy of our
acompañarnos.
country. Thank you very
Señor
much for
fiscal.
joining us here. You have the floor, Mr. Attorney General.
Señor Secretario de Estado,
Secretary of State,
señor Procurador General, señor
Attorney
Secretario de
General,
Homeland,
Secretary of
muchas
Homeland
gracias por
Security.
habernos invitado. Es un
Thank you
honor
so
estar aquí
much
con
for
ustedes.
inviting
Gracias
us.
a
It's an honor
todos,
to be with
a
you all.
todas.
Thank each and every
Señor
one of you,
embajador,
Ambassador as well.
creo que es
I
muy
believe that it's,
importante señalar
very important
que
to
el trabajo
point
que hemos
out that
venido
the
haciendo
work that we have been
se ha
engaged in
refrendado
over time has
con
been
mucho más ímpetu a partir de la presencia del señor embajador Salazar en México. Lo primero que comentamos es algo que debemos tener muy presente. Para la delincuencia no hay fronteras. La delincuencia es una estructura que precisamente se vale de la soberanía de los estados y de las circunstancias totalmente claras de nuestras competencias para usarlas en contra de la ciudadanía de ambos países. Por eso, cuando trabajamos juntos con todo el respeto a cada uno de los gobiernos, podemos lograr algo que de otra manera sería imposible de hacer. Lo primero que platiqué con el embajador Salazar eran tres cosas que nos preocupaban profundamente por el daño que estaba ocurriendo en México y en los Estados Unidos. Para nosotros, lo que está ocurriendo con el fentanilo es un fenómeno que le debemos de dar una importancia verdaderamente sustancial. Nosotros vivimos el problema de las drogas desde los años 70 y 80. Se lograron algunos beneficios y algunos avances, y ahora estamos frente a uno de los fenómenos más terribles que están destruyendo vidas de niños y de jóvenes en México y en los Estados Unidos. Esa debe de ser para nosotros nuestra mayor prioridad. Yo creo que lo que hagamos en eso es poco comparado con lo que eso significa para la vida, para las familias y para las nuevas generaciones de México y de los Estados Unidos. También vimos algo que era muy importante: evitar lo que se está haciendo con las personas migrantes. Los migrantes son víctimas y quienes los manejan son unos delincuentes desalmados. Si nosotros no tenemos la capacidad de ir a las cabezas de esas organizaciones que de otra manera no se pueden mover, no vamos a resolver el problema. El problema viene de México, viene de todo Centroamérica y ahora está viniendo de todas partes del mundo. Y nosotros tenemos que entender que este fenómeno es un fenómeno muy complicado. ¿Por qué? Porque el migrante no es un delincuente. El que es un delincuente es el que lo usa, el que lo explota, el que lo sujeta a daños que son verdaderamente inhumanos. Si no vamos contra esos grupos y esas cabezas, no vamos a poder resolver el problema, y por eso tenemos que, y estamos haciendo lo que es indispensable hacer. El tráfico de armas es para nosotros un problema que viene desde hace muchos años. Nosotros tenemos que encontrar la manera
find a way to prevent purchase of weapons illegally in the United States and for them to flood into Mexico. And they cause all these confrontations, which has cost thousands and thousands of lives. It's absolutely essential to understand this phenomenon. We're very clear about this. And let me tell you one thing that I believe is of the utmost importance. These are data that have been upheld by the National Geographic and Statistics Institute. I believe that these are well-known statistics by you. The phenomena of crime that had grown in a huge way has been stemmed. We don't recognize the means, but in reality, if you take a look at the statistics, the figures of how the mortality rates in Mexico have been evolving and based on under this government. And remember, prevention is not my bailiwick, that's not my area. But containing these crimes, containing a criminal phenomenon for those who we know is involved, and the effort that has to be made and what's been done by the armed forces has been just exemplary, and this is something that we should take very much into account. If you look at the statistics of how we've stemmed common crimes, especially homicide, and let me say that when it comes to federal crimes, what we're concerned with, and this has been recognized, federal crimes have been reduced over these 4 years by 32%. This had never happened in the past.
Están muy ¿cómo le diré? Muy contrastados. Lo bueno sale muy poco y lo que no es tan bueno se escandaliza con él. Pero nosotros tenemos la convicción de que lo que se está haciendo y el trabajo que hemos hecho, y debo reconocérselo, quien representa al presidente de los Estados Unidos y al gobierno de los Estados Unidos es el embajador. Y el embajador ha hecho un esfuerzo verdaderamente ejemplar. Nosotros hemos estado siempre en contacto con el secretario Mayorkas, con el señor procurador, con todos ustedes, porque creemos que si juntos lo hacemos, podemos ganar la batalla. Si vamos cada quien por su cuenta, olvídense, esto no va a funcionar. Así es de que una reunión como esta merece mucho respeto y sobre todo merece que tengamos la convicción de que cada uno de nosotros estamos trabajando para nuestra gente, para nuestro país. Pero al final de cuentas estamos trabajando también ustedes para nosotros y nosotros para ustedes. Muchas gracias.
Thank you very much. I think we're going to give our colleagues a minute to leave the room.